So the states of Nebraska and Oklahoma filed a federal lawsuit in the Supreme Court trying to block Colorado from continuing with legalized marijuana. All right, before I continue here, let me just say, that's such a douche move. And, of course, these states are led by conservatives, and conservatives usually like to pretend that they're on the side of states' rights. But when it's the states' rights of one state to try to enjoy a substance and try something different from what the rest of the country is doing, then all of a sudden they're not in favor of states' rights. They're only in favor of states' rights, apparently, when it's Arizona trying to implement their own draconian immigration laws. Then they love states' rights. And they loved states' rights back in the 1960s when it stood for allowing segregation. The states' rights for Mississippi and Alabama and southern states to decide to not treat black people as equals and to not allow them to vote. Then they love states' rights. But to legalize marijuana, well, no. Now we want the federal government to crush your ass. So it's a douche move, and these guys are hypocrites, and they're annoying. But let me give you some more details on it because it actually gets much more nuanced as we go along. They say, quote, federal law undisputedly prohibits the production and sale of marijuana. Colorado has undermined the United States Constitution, and I hope the U.S. Supreme Court will uphold our constitutional principles. So the Attorney General of Colorado responded, and he defended his state. He said, quote, because neighboring states have expressed concern about Colorado-grown marijuana coming into their states, we are not entirely surprised by this action. However, it appears the plaintiff's primary grievance stems from non-enforcement of federal laws regarding marijuana, as opposed to choices made by the voters of Colorado. We believe this suit is without merit, and we will vigorously defend against it in the U.S. Supreme Court. So the legal argument of Nebraska and Oklahoma is Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which is known as the Supremacy Clause, which simply means that federal law overrides state law. So when there's a contradiction between the two, you enforce the federal law. So that's their argument. And the response of Colorado is the legal principle of what's called prosecutorial discretion, which means that the feds don't have to crack down on marijuana if they choose not to. Sure, the laws are on the books, but if they choose not to, well, that's their prerogative. I mean, this is something that administrations have done with all types of stuff. For example, the Sherman Antitrust Act and all the anti-monopoly laws, they are still on the books, but they're never enforced anymore. I don't see Oklahoma and these other states suing to try to get the feds to implement anti-monopoly legislation, which, by the way, would help the American people out tremendously and help the economy out tremendously. So, what conclusion are we to come to about this from a legal perspective? Because obviously, from a personal perspective, it's clear that my opinion on the issue is that everybody should be able to have whatever substance they want. I think you have a right to put in your body whatever the hell you want to put in your body, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. But from a strictly legal perspective, going by the laws as they exist in the United States of America right now, how would I rule if I was on a court? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. And look, I'll give you a perfect example as to why. Take out marijuana from the equation, put in gun laws. So we've had a bunch of crazy right-wing sheriffs and right-wing local governments and state governments even that say, we are not going to enforce federal laws on guns. So even if you do a universal background check, even if you do a ban on high-capacity magazines, we don't care. We are simply not going to enforce it. Now, in that situation, all the liberals, keep it real, would all line up on the side of the debate where we say, well, fuck you, it's the law, got to implement it. What are you doing? You can't just ignore it. You're just going to nullify whatever federal laws you don't like? I mean, that's an old school Southern segregationist strategy. That's not cool. So this is the same legal principle at work, except the political situation flipped. Because now we're talking about the federal law ignoring enforcing marijuana laws that are on the books. So now it's liberals at a state level who are saying, well, I don't care about your fucking federal laws. Fuck off. We're not going to enforce them. So remember, you have to be consistent on the legal principle. You can't just pull an Antonin Scalia and flip-flop on the legal principle depending on where your politics fits. You see what I'm saying? So I'd be 50-50 on this because it's true that while this is a federal law and you need to enforce it, at the same time, you do have prosecutorial discretion. If an administration doesn't want to do it, they don't have to do it, right? So I don't know how I would rule if I was a judge, okay? I really don't. But if I was a legislator or if I was the president of the United States, I do know what I would do. I would try to clear up all this confusion by simply getting rid of the federal laws that say you can't legalize marijuana at a state level, you can't smoke marijuana at all. Because if you change those federal laws, and you don't even need to necessarily change the federal laws to say marijuana is legal at a federal level, you just need to change the federal laws to say it's okay if the states choose to make it legal within their own states. So I would tweak the federal laws to allow the states to do this to clear up all the confusion.